We continue our coverage of this weekend's AEW Double or Nothing, coming up on Sunday from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. One of the men that should prove instrumental in that very event joins me now on the Vaqueros Cafe and Cantina hotline. He is a good friend of ours. We've known him for a while because not only is he the current and two-time TNT champion, he's part of the Circus fam. He is Scorpio Sky. Follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Scorpio Sky. Sky, what's up, my friend?
Hey, man. Thank you very much for that great intro. Part of the Circus fam forever. And it's good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. Let me ask you, first of all, do you have, because I think when the promotion closed, you were the Sideshow champion. Do you have that belt?
No, I don't. And I wasn't the Sideshow champion. I was actually the ringmaster.
Oh, you were the ring? Okay, I couldn't remember if it was you or Cage, because we went through some title changes there.
Yes. I actually beat Sammy for it.
That's
won
right.
On the second to last show.
Okay, but you don't have that belt.
No, I don't have the belt.
Man, that's too bad. I've got the belt buckle. So apparently Al made some belt buckles, or made one, and I bought it from him. So I've got the belt buckle for that title. I tell you what, give me your best memory from wrestling WrestleCircus. It went for a couple years, and I know it was short, but I tell you what, when it was happening, it was as hot as ever.
Honestly, I think it had to probably be the match with Cody. Just because that was kind of a turning point for me. All the build up leading up to it, he was kind of still fresh on the independent circuit at the time. And I'll never forget getting the call from Al, and he was like really excited. And he was just like, "Hey, we're bringing Cody in." And I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome, man." And he's like, "Oh, and he requested to work with you. Like, he specifically asked for you." And I was like, "Me?" Like, that's weird, but okay, cool. And like me at the time, I was like, still in the indies, and I was kind of struggling. I hadn't even started working for Ring of Honor yet. And once we had that match, I knew if I knocked it out of the park that, people were going to watch it. And everything kind of just kicked off from there. And that led to Ring of Honor, which ultimately led to AEW. So that had to be my favorite memory.
Yeah, that night, Cody was the Ring of Honor World Champion at the time. And so, he and Brandy came in, and that night was that night was so loaded. You guys just killed it, and you were fantastic. But the whole night, I think we had Adam Cole in that night with Britt Baker. We had it was just one of those nights where, if you are a wrestling fan and you were at 800 Congress that night, you were thanking God above that you were a wrestling fan to see that night, and just it was such a magical night. I loved it. Let me ask you this: early in your career, you also fought in MMA, and I know a lot of stuff that you trained in MMA. I'm sure carried over into professional wrestling. Talk for a second about your MMA influence in your wrestling career.
Well, early in my career, I was more known as a high flyer. I did a lot of, aerial tactics, and I look at guys now, the stuff that they do are insane. And, sometimes I'll kind of joke and I'll say, I used to do stuff kind of like that. In my first couple of years, I was doing 450s. I was doing Phoenix splashes, all kinds of crazy dives and head scissors. And because, I was trained lucha, like originally I learned the lucha libre style. That's where I originated. So I learned all that stuff. But, I was really young when I thought to myself, I want to do this for a long time. And I may not be able to do these moves 10 or 15 years from now. And I don't want to become known as a guy that only does this. And then 10 or 15 years from now, what am I going to do? They'll be talking about, oh man, he was great back then. So I thought I needed to change my style back then. And I went to more of a technical style. Once I started training in mixed martial arts, I started incorporating a lot of that into it. A lot of knees, a lot of forearms and strikes and leg kicks and submissions and triangle chokes and stuff that you see a lot of today. and you've seen a lot over the last several years. But at the time I started doing it back in 2004, it really wasn't that big, especially in the United States. So it was something different. It was fresh. And so, it just kind of worked for me. And I always kind of looked at myself as more of a fighter's type of build, like my physical build. Obviously now it's a little bit more pro wrestling because the business is a lot physically smaller than it used to be. But at that time, it was still The Rock. It was still Stone Cold Steve Austin. And so, I always looked at my body as more of, a Muay Thai fighter or a mixed martial arts fighter, just by the way I'm built, more so than a giant, big, burly pro wrestler. And so it just kind of fit me like that. And I thought, well, if I look like a fighter, then why don't I train and perform like a fighter? And that always kind of just influenced my style and my approach even to wrestling. I kind of go into matches, especially the big ones, like it's a big fight. And which is really cool because, the crossover between mixed martial arts and pro wrestling in the last 10 years or so has really opened the door for that. And I think that's a big part of why the business is smaller, because you can look at the UFC and you see guys that are 135 pounds and they're badasses. Whereas back in the day, if you were a small guy, you were kind of considered weak. Now you can look at guys that are, in those lower weight classes, and you're like, I'm not messing with those dudes.
Yeah.
So, I think that helps the business kind of transition and catch up.
Well, and it kind of feeds into, the alignment with you and Ethan Page with American Top Team and Dan Lambert. So, what kind of influence has that association had in recently with you and Ethan, so to speak, kind of align yourself with one of the best teams in MMA?
It's been really cool. For one, Dan he's an incredible talker. I mean, he can cut a freaking promo, and he can talk people in the building. He's really good at pissing people off. And, he's just the consummate, unlikable old boomer guy. And people love to hate him, and people hate to hate him. You know what I mean? Like he elicits so many different emotions, and it's great. Ethan Page, on the other side, is another great talker and in-ring performer. He looks like $1 million, and he has tremendous upside. And him and I clicked immediately. Our chemistry was just there, and we didn't even really know each other when we started teaming. But in a very short period of time, I think we cut 1 or 2 promos, and we realized we had something. We're like, this is special. Like, we have an odd chemistry about the two of us. And, it's really interesting. Someone asked me a while back, like, what would you compare you and Ethan Page to? If we were going to look at a team from the past, what would you compare it to? And I really had no comparison. Like, I couldn't think of anything. And then after a couple of weeks, that question kind of kept ringing in my mind. And then I thought, like, what's very similar is the Hollywood Blondes.
Oh, yeah.
You go back to WCW, you have the smaller, athletic, high-flying, more known as a babyface, Brian Pillman. And you've got the big, thick, tough, Steve Austin. And they were 2 singles wrestlers that were just kind of thrown together. And then they made it work spectacularly. And so, that would be the biggest comparison, I would say, with Ethan Page and I. And then you add in Dan Lambert as like a mouthpiece, even though we can both talk. All of us can kind of talk our asses off. It's just a really nice recipe for success.
Yeah, now that you say that, I can see, you're kind of you're the Pillman, and Ethan feels a little like Stunning Steve Austin, and yeah, it's got that. I don't know, it's got that thing that shouldn't work, but it works beautifully. It really does. I had a chance to talk with Ethan a couple months ago, and he was talking about that you guys work so well together. Let me ask you this, because I know you live in LA, and without you kind of have that on-screen look. You have that look that I could see you on a maybe like watching CSI or something. Any thoughts as to acting, or are you full in on pro wrestling?
As of right now, I'm full in on pro wrestling. This is all I've ever wanted to do. I'm definitely, there's a lot of people in the business these days that kind of just get in as a gateway to get to what they really want to do.
Right.
Like, I want to do this wrestling thing to kind of get my name out there and then do something else. Me, it was always about being a pro wrestler. And if it develops into something else, then great. Yes, I would like to eventually cross over and do a little bit more acting and yada, yada, yada. And, some more podcasting, but, as everybody knows, not all of us can be The Rock. We're not going to all cross over and become multi-millionaires and superstars and more known for acting than for pro wrestling. So, at my core, I'm a professional wrestler. But there's a lot of stuff I want to do, man. And acting is one of them. I want to get back into podcasting. I want to do some hosting. I still don't know if I'm done fighting, honestly. I've been thinking a lot lately about wanting to maybe get a little boxing in. I've done some MMA fights, but I've never done boxing. So that's one of the things I'm kind of interested in doing as well before I'm too old to do it. So,
Yeah.
There's a lot on the checklist and the bucket list.
Yeah, and I could see you as a boxer, definitely. You have that form. It feels like the stance you take. You got a good boxing stance. So, before we get to Sunday, you mentioned, of course, you're part of with Ethan Page, All Ego Ethan Page and Dan Lambert and everything. But before that, of course, you were synonymous with SCU, and I know that you and Frankie just had a hell of a match. Talk for a second about the experience you had with both Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels, and you were kind of the young blood alongside those two that have been in for quite some time. What's the biggest takeaway that you can think of being a part of that trio?
For one, professionalism. Those guys are consummate professionals. From the moment their eyes open, and they awake to the time they go to sleep. If the meeting time is 4:00, they are there at 3:45 or 3:50, ready to go. Those guys are pros, and that's why they've been in this business for so long. Frankie's been around for over 20 to 25 years, and CD has been around for about 30 years, and it's not easy to make it and actually make a living in professional wrestling. It's not easy. You have to be really, really good and lucky, and you have to have the right mind. And for these guys to be able to have all these years in the business, and they're not doing side jobs. These guys have been making a living at professional wrestling for decades, and you don't get this far if you don't have a good head on your shoulders. And they are two of the smartest minds I've ever worked with, and they're really, really good. That's another thing, to have all these years. Their approach to the business is as serious as it gets, and I've enjoyed those years I had with them. They were a huge learning experience, and I don't get to where I'm at right now without being a part of SCU, and that's a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it worked so well, and of course now part of Men of the Year with Ethan is just so good. All right, let's talk about Sunday. Let's talk about Double or Nothing. You've got this rivalry going with Sammy Guevara over the TNT title. Of course, you're the champion right now, but we saw last week Sammy and Ty Conti basically destroying the belt. Give me your sense as to where this might be headed. I know Sammy and Ty won a mixed tag against Paige Van Zant and one of you. I know that's a possibility, but give me your sense of what this rivalry is to you and where you see this going.
Of course they want that match. You know why? Because they're a couple of groupies. They want to attach themselves to someone who has star power. And so they see Paige Van Zant coming to AEW, and they're like, oh, I can gain some Twitter and Instagram followers off her because she has like 4 million of them. So, of course, they want to attach themselves to Paige Van Zant. And of course, they want to attach themselves to, Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page because we're doing well. We're winning right now. And they don't want to get left behind. When you're a champion, like he was 3 times, when you lose that championship, there's only 2 places you can go. You can't stay where you're at. You go up or you go down. And he is clawing to stay relevant. He is scratching and clawing and trying to hold on to the little relevancy that he still has. And he's doing that by trying to attach himself to the champions and attach himself to people with star power. And we're not going to let it happen. We're done with them. We've already beat them multiple times. The fans don't want to see it anymore. But, it's a big week. They are determined to try to get us into a match. And we're not afraid of them. I want to make that clear. We're not afraid of them. We beat them up every single week. Week after week after week, we beat them up. And we enjoy beating them up. But eventually it gets a little boring. But again, they're doing all they can to get us into a match. It's a big week. We're going to see what's going to happen. As of right now, we don't have a match for Sunday. We don't have a match for tomorrow. We don't have a match for Friday. So we're going to see what happens.
Man, I think if the match does happen, I think it'll be a hell of a match. I think you guys will knock it out of the park. We'll see what happens. I mean, like you said, before I let you go, Sky, I know that, of course, this week is so exciting with Double or Nothing being in Vegas, all the stuff. Do you gamble, by the way?
I'm not really a gambler. I did.
Okay.
I did play some machines last time I was in Vegas. I went just for fun a couple months ago. I won a couple $100, so it was nice. I don't know if I'm going to test my luck this time.
I get you. I'm the same way, exact same way. But next week, AEW finally makes it to the West Coast. They're going to be in your neck of the woods. They're at the Forum. They're in Los Angeles. Talk for a second about how excited you are to have AEW Dynamite in your backyard next week.
This is going to be a huge moment for my career. The crazy thing is I started my wrestling career in June of 2002 in the Los Angeles area. And here we are, full circle, coming back in June of 2022 as a champion, coming back to Los Angeles in the Forum, where I grew up, the Lakers, the Dodgers, all these great sports franchises. And hey, I'm bringing a championship to the city of Los Angeles. So I think we may have a parade. We'll see. And I'm not going to sleep on Ontario, California either, because I also grew up in that area. This is going to be a huge week for me. I've been excited about coming to Los Angeles ever since AEW started. We've never been to Southern California. Unfortunately, things got delayed because of COVID, but we are back, and it is going to be big.
I can't wait. I got to see the Forum when I was there for the Super Bowl, and I was at SoFi Stadium doing a tour, and as I'm leaving, didn't realize that the Forum was practically next door to SoFi, so that was really cool to see that building, see what that building means to sports, especially with the Lakers and all their championships and everything. And yeah, it's gonna be a hell of a show when AEW hits the Forum there in Los Angeles. He is Scorpio Sky, the 2-time TNT champion. Catch him Wednesday nights on AEW Dynamite on TBS, AEW Rampage Friday nights on TNT, and catch AEW Double or Nothing live on Bleacher Report for those in the U.S. or Fight TV for those outside the United States this Sunday from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Sky, it is so good to talk to you, my friend. I've always enjoyed our time together. Anytime I get to see you, I love hugging your neck, man. I wish you all the best. Have a great time in Vegas this week, and we'll talk again soon.
A pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.